Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and before we finish up this entire series, before we finish up the NFL draft season, I would like to thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart for joining me along in this process. Thank all the new subscribers. Hope you stick around. Hope you enjoy fantasy football content because that is the content most of the season. And it has been a pleasure going along this journey with all of you. This is going to be the final page in this book before we start the new chapter for the new fantasy football season. So let's start off with the AFC West in this video with the Broncos, who had 5 picks in this draft. And they started off by going with wide receiver Marvin Mims, gave him an A- here at the end of the second round. Thought this was a very good pick. I have mocked very similar types of wide receivers to the Broncos in my drafts when I mocked for them. Nathaniel Dell, I think, is the receiver. I've mocked them once or maybe twice. Vertical playmaker. I thought that's what they needed on this offense, so I totally agree with this decision. Then early third round, they come back and they get Drew Sanders off the board, and I thought that was a great pick. A+. It's better than who I was mocking to them. I have mocked linebacker to them around this spot, and I just never had Drew Sanders available, so I would be absolutely excited if I was a Broncos fan. After that, Riley Moss later in the first round. D+, it is a need that they filled just a little bit early for the player, and I had others available that I would have taken. Then there's a bit of a long break before their next pick in the 6th round. Safety J.L. Skinner, gave that an A-. He did fall a little ways in this draft due to injury. Should be able to come back and be fine eventually. So I thought that was a good value here. He's not really a my guy. He was very mumbly in his interview or his media session at the Combine, and so I would just have some concerns as far as leadership goes and communication. Not that those are an absolute requirement, but at the back end of my defense, they would be preferences for me personally, but that's why, that's just why I didn't have him like a second, third round guy. Very, very talented player. And then in the 7th round, center Alex Forsyth, gave that an A. They stayed patient, and they became basically the only team in this draft not to reach at the center position. So that works out very well for them. The biggest knock here is that they did not address the defensive line. Did address the front 7 at least, but no defensive line picks here. Thought that was a need that I had for them. Only 5 picks, so at the end of the day, gave them a C+/B- because I do think that they're walking away with some pretty darn good players, and they got some pretty good value along the way, so it was a good draft. Just missing a couple of things, and obviously limited as to the quantity of players that they were able to draft. The Kansas City Chiefs had 7 picks in this draft, and most years I am absolutely fired up about the Chiefs draft, and they take a bunch of my favorite players. Typically on defense, I tend to align with them most years, as of late, at least over the last 5 years or so. In general, this Kansas City class was a little bit less exciting, but not by much, and they did address all of their needs here. First off, at the end of the first round, they started off with edge rusher Felix Anudike-Uzomah. I give that a B+. At the end of the day, I probably would have traded back if I were them. A little tiny bit early here for Felix, in my opinion. Not by much, but I would have liked to get a little bit of capital to trade back and felt like I probably still could have drafted him. Then in the second round, they move up a little ways to get wide receiver Rashee Rice. This is a move that I have done with them. I have drafted Rashee Rice to them several times, saying that I think he would be the perfect fit for this Kansas City offense, and apparently they felt the same way since they did spend some capital to go up and get him. It's an A+ pick for me. I absolutely love the fit of Rashee Rice with the Kansas City Chiefs, and I can't believe all the hate that I hear about this pick. Trust me, I think it's going to work out pretty nicely. I don't know that he's some sort of Hall of Fame receiver or anything like that, but I think you're going to end up being pretty happy with what you get out of him in your system there. Then in the 3rd round, they take offensive tackle Wanya Morris. Gave that a B. The value was good there. Just a little bit early on my board. Excusable, though, to get a big need like this. So it's fine. Like I said, I think overall the value was just fine there. And part of the reason I believe that I have that B plus up on their first pick was also because I felt like they should probably take care of offensive line right off the bat there. Then with the fourth pick of this draft, they took safety Shamari Connor. This is a guy who, well, I'm just going to read what I wrote on him. He's a good leader. He's tough, physical, versatile, and he's a hybrid slot safety. And so this is a pick that I originally did not give him a B plus, A minus grade. Don't remember what I originally gave, but there were, I think, have been 2 players, including him, that I've updated the draft grade on post draft. And so for him, why I updated it is because he was one of a kind, and I think he's a perfect fit also for this defense, like a perfect fit. So I totally understand it. I had guys ahead of him, but I didn't have another him ahead of him. Did think it's a bit of a reach, but if there's only one guy that fits a certain role that is important in your defense, I think it's okay to reach for him. Then in the 5th round, took B.J. Thompson. Maybe this is another Shamari Connor pick, and I just missed out on it. I had him as an undrafted free agent, so gave that an F. And then Keandre Coburn, though, in the 6th round, nose tackle. Absolutely love him. A plus here. Just great. Love it. And then in the 7th round, cornerback Nick Jones. Really good value there as well. So all in all, I really like this class a lot for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's why I gave them an A minus. They addressed all their needs. They're looking good. The Las Vegas Raiders came in and they had a real sneaky good draft. They almost did an amazing job of addressing their needs, but no offensive line. I have written offensive line, comma, WTF, exclamation point, all capitals. I don't understand how you walk away, especially when you have 9 picks in this draft as the Raiders, without any kind of offensive lineman. It's a pretty important need for them, and I just don't understand that. Yet, they still got a B plus from me, so they obviously did some things that I really liked. Starting off, Tyree Wilson right off the bat, gave that an A minus. I don't recall exactly what the reasoning behind the A minus, but if I'm a Raiders fan and I walked away with Tyree Wilson at pick 7, I think I'm pretty darn happy with that. Then same thing here with Michael Mayer. I'm pretty darn happy with getting Michael Mayer if I'm a Raiders fan there. Then in the 3rd round, I think they kind of dropped the ball here a little bit with Byron Young from Alabama. D plus C grade on here, interior defensive lineman. Those that were helping to address one of the areas that I think they really needed to focus on in this draft. So I like the pick. I don't like where they took the player. Then later on in the 3rd round, we have wide receiver Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker is my guy. He ended up getting a little bit buried on my board, which is part of the reason here for the B+. But when I went back and I looked at my original write-up on him, I gave him a 3rd round projection, and I actually half-heartedly compared him to Hunter Renfrow. So that should give you an idea of the type of wide receiver Trey Tucker is. Like him a lot. I think there is a huge upside here with him. Might just be a so-so player, of course, too. Then Jacorian Bennett getting a cornerback. I think that was important. And then you get quarterback Aiden O'Connell here in the 4th. Fully expected the Raiders to draft him. Just seemed like they were very, very interested in him. I drafted him in the 3rd round, so that was probably a little bit too early in one of my mocks. So it makes sense. I think it's good value here. A-. Aiden O'Connell is not my guy. I actually don't really like him. At the Combine, my notes on his media session were very quickly just not feeling it. But Aiden O'Connell is one of, I would say, top 6 or 7 guys in this draft as far as the likelihood of them developing into a starter. So I think it was a good pick as long as, whatever rubbed me the wrong way doesn't rub others the wrong way in the locker room. That's, especially for a quarterback, that's an important thing not to do. Then in the 5th round, safety, Christopher Smith, gave that an A+. Thought that was a great value there. Did not have edge rusher Amari Burney on my draft board. And then they finished this up with interior defensive lineman Nesta Jade Silvera. A very interesting prospect. Was not my guy, was definitely somebody who stood out in this process, however. Gave that pick an A. I just had him 4 spots below the player that they took in the early 3rd round there in Byron Young from Alabama, to give you an idea of the difference that I had in those two as far as my rankings went. Now, when it comes to looking at the totality of the Las Vegas Raiders draft, I feel the vision. I see the vision. They wanted to get bigger, stronger, and more versatile, and I think they did that. The big whoops here was no offensive line, but I really like this draft. I think that defense is just going to look different going forward, and then they got some good other pieces. So, great job. The Chargers had 7 picks in this draft, and they addressed their biggest needs, but I'm missing out on a defensive back and a running back here. There were some good running backs left after this draft, and I think that the same could be said of the safeties for whatever they were worth in this draft. So I'm going to cut the Chargers a break on not addressing either of those spots in this draft. As far as the wide receivers go, that was one of the needs. Start off the draft with Quentin Johnson, gave that an A-. Bit of a boom or bust kind of guy, but really do like the pick, and I think he'll be, I think that they probably drafted him as a Keenan Allen replacement type. He would fit that role really nicely. So I think that that's a nice addition to this team, and he can do some other stuff while Keenan Allen's still there. That'll be fine. And then their other wide receiver they took in the 4th round, wide receiver Darius Davis, gave that a B-/B+, so kind of a B. Like Darius Davis quite a bit. Thought there were some other guys that do similar things that I would have taken over him, but I really like him as the fit here. We all wanted the Chargers to get a deep threat, somebody with pure sprinter speed, and that's exactly part of the write-up that I had for him, is that he'll bring some sprinter speed to the table. So great job of drafting these wide receivers, I think. Love the pair. Then you bring in edge rusher Tuli Tuipulotu, and he's going to bring some versatility to this defensive line while also bringing some quarterback rushing abilities to the squad that they also needed. So I think he's really pulling some weights here as far as filling a couple of needs for the Chargers. Really, really good pick, good fit for their needs. And then in the 3rd round, linebacker Diane Hanley, that's an A+ here. They absolutely nailed that one. Great value, and I can't imagine a team that he would have been a better fit for. I don't know that I thought about it pre-draft, but I absolutely love the fit here. In the 7th round, we see quarterback Max Duggan go, gave that one an A+, and once again we see patience paying off. Patience at the quarterback position. I had Max Duggan in the same bucket as several other quarterbacks, some that went 4th, 5th, 6th round, and they stay patient and they get a possible backup in Max Duggan. You kick the tires on it, see what you get out of it. I think he has a lot of great tools. I wanted to like him more during this draft process, but there are some serious issues. There's also some really good tools to work with. So in the 7th round, I think it's a great find there for the Chargers. At the end of the day, stuck him into this B+ category. What I gave him was a little B and an even smaller plus. So just barely a B+. Really, really solid draft there from the Chargers. Let's move on to the NFC. And right off the bat with Arizona, they get 9 picks in this draft, and they absolutely killed it. They addressed all of their needs. They never reached for a player, and they masterfully worked around this draft. I thought that I had done really well for Arizona in a few mocks for them, but I think that they managed to better than I did. I would have liked to see a running back in this draft, but I can't argue against any of their picks either. Like, I don't know at what point do I say you should have taken a running back here. I mean, Clayton Tune, you kind of need that. So, and then the same thing that I said for the Chargers. Like, there were some good running backs still left after this draft. Go get one of them as an undrafted free agent. So we start this draft off with Paris Johnson Jr. after doing some trading around, acquiring some excellent future capital. It's an A++ there to start this draft. Just amazing, and you're addressing a huge, huge need with the best tackle in this draft. Then edge rusher B.J. Ojulari, loved it. Garrett Williams, same. Michael Wilson, not as much, but good pick, good pick. John Gaines II was a near my guy along the offensive line, gave that an A. Quarterback Clayton Tune gave that a B. There were some other quarterbacks I would have taken ahead of him, but I felt that the value is right on here, so it makes sense, and they probably need a backup quarterback here for the next year. See what you get with him. Linebacker Owen Papo, A+. He has all of the tools and more to be an absolute stud. The potential is there, so love that pick. And then in the 6th round, Keitrell Clark, absolute my guy here, A+. Love that. Thought they got a great value on him. Think he can come in and contribute pretty darn quickly. And they finished this up with defensive tackle Dante Stills. Didn't love the pick because there were some other defensive tackles that I would have taken ahead of him, but the value was there for it. So excellent, excellent draft. The Arizona Cardinals absolutely hit it out of the ballpark with this one. And if the Arizona Cardinals hit it out of the ballpark, then the Los Angeles Rams hit, I don't know, an infield home run with like some errors on the defense here. They had 14 picks in this draft. They came out of nowhere, and the Rams just came in, and they had a spectacular draft here. No first-round draft picks, and I swear, they took a page out of my playbook for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that I utilized in, I believe it was my 3.0 mock draft. What I was doing for them, I think I had 5 or 6 trade backs in the first. It could have even been the first 2 rounds, or maybe it was 7 by the end of the 3rd round. I did pretty much exactly what the Rams did here. Trade back, acquire capital, fill holes. Because I think both of these rosters have that in similar. They have to turn over their rosters. They just need to bring in butts to help fill out their teams. And additionally, as far as the Rams go here, they also got a lot of good value picks along the way. Some real solid players in this group. And they addressed the trenches quite a bit, which is huge if you're retooling your team. So, start off the draft, Steve Avila, B+, A-. I would have gone Osiris Torrance, but given the big difference of when they got drafted, apparently the NFL, in large part, felt Steve Avila. So, first guard off the board, awesome. Edge rusher Byron Young from Tennessee, D+, C-. Just a little bit early on that, but like the guy enough. Defensive tackle Kobe Turner. Absolutely, really like this pick. Just a little bit early for me. Same with quarterback Stetson Bennett. A little bit early. Good pick. Real good pick. So a little bit about Stetson Bennett. I think that he is going to be the next best backup quarterback in the league. In 3 years, I think that could very well be where he is. He has a very Alex Moran quality, if you remember from Blue Mountain State, if you've ever seen that. He reminds me of him in some ways. What I wrote about Stetson Bennett after seeing him at the Combine and his media session is that he has a typical veteran quarterback-like quality. It's like an I don't care, in quotes, type of quality, which is probably good when you're facing diversity, and as we know, quarterbacks face diversity, and so has Stetson Bennett. And then I just finished it up by saying, hopefully he does care, though. And the fact that he got taken in the 4th round tells me that at least the Los Angeles Rams felt that he does care about the game. You know, he is going to show up and practice and put in the work. And he's in an opportunity here with the Rams that he'll get a shot to become a starter here if he can develop well enough. So, good situation. I like him. There's something about him that I like, that don't give an F attitude. Then we have Nick Hampton after that. I like the player enough. Once again, just gone a little bit too early for me, and there was some other edge rushers that I would have taken above him. C plus for that. Offensive tackle Warren McClendon. Here's where we're gonna start to see this draft really look good. I think they got some great value here at offensive tackle, which doesn't always happen in Warren McClendon. Follow that up with the same thing here for tight end Davis Allen. Thought that was an excellent pick at a good value. Then you have wide receiver Puka Nacua, who I gave a C because I did have him much lower on my draft board. But that said, he's a very interesting wide receiver. So we'll see. I could very well have been wrong on him. After that, we get quarterback Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, and this is where we started to kick this draft into another gear at the 5th round. And then with Travius Hodges-Tomlinson falling to them and them taking advantage of that, gave it an A-/A+. Absolutely a great, fantastic draft pick, and it could have been taken as early as the 3rd round if you ask me. Wasn't. There's a bit of a boom or bustness to him. Also, I do have some concerns about him. I'm not going to get into that. All in all, in the 6th round, all concerns gone. Whatever. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I think there's a good chance that he could be a very good player. Then edge rusher Oshawan Mathis, my guy here in the 6th round to follow that up, gave that an A. And I thought that he could go as early as the 4th round. Part of my write-up on him was I said that physically he is right there with Lucas Van Ness and Keon White, 2 guys that got taken in early first, middle 2nd round. He even has longer arms, which I think is very important, to the point where I probably overrate that trait. His athletics don't pop off the page, but if the edge spot doesn't work out for him, I think that he could put on a few pounds onto his frame and work out as a more traditional defensive end in a rotation on passing downs. If I'm a coach and I believe in my ability to coach up, this kid's got a toolkit that I would be happy to work with. Then you follow that up with Zach Evans at running back. Really, really quality pick here. Good value. Punter, guy who was, I think, an undrafted free agent for me at safety. And then interior defensive lineman Desjuan Johnson as the last pick of this draft. Actually, I had heard about him and heard good things about him. I think he probably should have been on my draft board, so I think they probably got a pretty solid pick there, football guy. I absolutely love this draft. Gave him a B+. Just absolutely nail it. This is the best possible B+. It couldn't even be held inside of that box, if you notice, so good job at Rams. And that's going to bring us to an interesting draft here for the San Francisco 49ers. They did end up having 9 picks in this draft, but none of those picks were prior to the 24th pick of this draft in the 3rd round. And actually, they had to trade up for that. They did have the earliest capital that they started the draft with was the 35th pick of the 3rd round. As far as needs go, I think they kind of addressed them, but they didn't get any offensive linemen here. What I wrote is I have needs, and then I have 3 bullet points. The first bullet point was no O-line. Second bullet point was I think they brought D. Winters in actually to help at the nickel, because I don't think that's where you're going to want to put Darrell Lutter Jr. So I'm pretty sure that was the need there for D. Winters filled. Awesome. And then no O-line was the 3rd one. So I don't get it. You had one really glaring need for help along the offensive line. Did have 9 picks here. I know it wasn't a great offensive line draft, but there were still some guys available that were pretty good. So I don't like that. That said, I do feel the vision and I see the fits. So I like that. A lot of these guys are, simply put, they're football guys. And I think that the staff there at San Francisco really likes to get guys who love the game of football in there. And there's no more of a football guy that I noticed in this draft than their first pick in safety, Jair Brown, setting the tone. I gave that pick an A-/A. He was my guy. And here is my write-up on him from my analysis after the Combine. I wrote that this dude had my absolute favorite interview with the media at the Combine. I gave him a 10 out of 10 and called him a quote-unquote student of the game. As a coach, this is the guy that I want on my team. I don't even care how good he is. I think he will stick around in the NFL because of that, and probably find his way into coaching after that. Unfortunately, his Combine was not pretty, but I fell in love with him. At the end of the day, I'm going to stick to this 3rd round evaluation. I went on and I did some analysis, wrote a little bit about that, but at the end of the day, I stuck with my 3rd round evaluation on him. I just love what he brings to the table, even if he isn't an every down player on Sundays. So maybe a later 3rd round guy. That's what I wrote. So, yeah, I think I pretty much nailed what the NFL felt about him. Later 3rd round guy here, and somebody even spent a little bit of capital to go up on him. Wasn't talked about a whole lot in the pre-draft process. I absolutely loved him. Think you got a baller there who's going to be great in the locker room and pitch in nicely as a depth piece and probably a starter at times or something like that. We'll see. I like a lot about him. Then kicker, hate that. Followed by Cameron Leatu, tight end. I actually like him a fair bit. Did pop off a little bit early for him, / there were some other tight ends there would have gone with. But I think another just guy who plays football, like football. Then we jump to the 5th round there, missed out on the 4th round, and we get cornerback Darrell Lutter Jr. Good value, good pick. There were some other guys there. Robert Beal Jr., edge rusher, good value for him. And linebacker D. Winters, really good value here. I mean, that was an actual value pick, so gave that an A. Love it. And obviously, realized after the draft that there is a really good fit for him and as a slot guy to cover the slots in their nickelback spot. Follow that up with tight end Braden Willis, A here. So you're really seeing some good value at the end of this draft. And I think that Braden Willis is going to be kind of your Kyle Juszczyk type. Whether he turns out as good as Kyle Juszczyk or not, who knows? But that's kind of the role that they're going to bring him in for. The hopes would be for long term. Eventually, Kyle will have to move on. And then you follow that up with wide receiver Ronnie Bell. Really good value here. There were some guys that I would take over him, but a total San Francisco fit, just like Braden Willis, just like a lot of these guys. And the role that Ronnie Bell has in their offense, give him an A-, by the way, is the Debo role. After I think they wasted a pick on Danny Gray last season. That's how I felt about it, at least at the moment. And so they're bringing in another guy that can maybe compete with Danny Gray for the backup to Debo and the potential successor to him eventually in this offense. That's how I view it. And then you finish this up with linebacker Jalen Graham, B-, a solid pick. There were other linebackers I would have gone with, though. Solid value, though. I had him as a 7th-round draft pick. Overall, gave him a C. No offensive line. I actually liked this draft class quite a bit, but no offensive line, terrible. And then, of course, you include the fact that they didn't have any picks until late 3rd round, so that value just kind of made it hard for them to have a good overall grade here when you start that late in the draft. But I would be excited enough, based on when my team started picking if I was a San Francisco fan. I know a lot of people are dogging this. This is like a really, flip this C downwards and then put 2 dots above it, turn it into a smiley face. I do like this draft. And then we're going to wrap everything up with the Seattle Seahawks here. Gave them an A-. So I thought this was a really good draft. In-house, if you ask the staff to self-scout, how did you do in the draft? I think that they would probably feel like they nailed it. They would probably give themselves an A or an A+. I'm almost positive of that. For me, they just popped early on some guys. Didn't quite, the value wasn't there on my board, as well as I just would have gone a different route than them at times. That's kind of why the value wasn't there. There were other guys that I had higher at those positions, and I'm really talking from pick 6 in the 2nd round there through round 5, pick 17 with Mike Morris. That's where that analysis really comes from. So in total, the Seahawks had 10 picks in this draft, and they did address all of their needs twice over in several circumstances, which I think is great to do. So you start off the draft at pick 5 with the best defensive back of this draft in Devin Witherspoon. Awesome pick. A wide receiver, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Mocked him to them in my 1.0. So obviously no qualms about that. I think it was a good pick then, and I think it was a good pick now. Then with this pick, Derek Hall, edge rusher. I like the player. Don't like when they took him. Thought there were other guys. Zach Charbonnet. Not a my guy. I had him lower than a lot of people at running back. This is partially where I'm going to differ from the majority of people's opinions on this draft. So I'm not in love with Zach. I thought there were a lot of guys who did some similar things even better than him. But I got a good running back, and I like them taking these running backs. I think that was a bit of a need that as a draft community kind of didn't realize, forgot about, missed on them. But good job of going for running backs here, Seattle. That was probably quite important. Then offensive guard Anthony Bradford. Nothing wrong with the player. Like him a fair bit. Just thought they went a little bit early. Nose tackle Cameron Young. Similar thing. Edge rusher Mike Morris. Similar story. Then in the 20th pick of the 5th round, Olusegun Oluwatimi, center. I think I said another team. Good job. You're like the only team who didn't reach on a center. Well, that could probably be said here as well. For the Seattle Seahawks with Oluwatimi, A-, A for that pick. Loved it. Safety Jarek Reed, not on my draft board. And then running back Kenny McIntosh was actually a my guy. So obviously going to give that an A or an A+ here. Thought it was good value at that point. I'm just going to give you an example of how I think that they could have done better in this draft in my eyes. And that would be to take the center Olusegun Oluwatimi and offensive guard Anthony Bradford, and you flip those 2 positions with their Derek Hall pick and the a Zach Charbonnet pick. So you get a running back like in the 5th round. In the 4th round, you get an edge rusher, and then you address those offensive line needs with those 2 6th round picks. I think at least a center, John Michael Schmitz would have been there. Yeah, they definitely would have. So that's how I would have done it. There's plenty of running back depth here, some solid edge depth. So I just feel like they didn't quite play the board perfectly. I like a lot of the players for the Seattle that they drafted quite a bit, and I really like the additions along this defensive line as a philosophy. I think that they all work well together to bring a lot to this team. So absolutely excellent, and yeah, I think it was a very, very good draft by Seattle. I would have just done things a little bit differently, but A- for them. And that wraps up this video series, the NFC. So who won between the AFC and the NFC in the battle of the divisions here? Well, the NFC clearly won this battle, and so that makes it an even 2-2 split. AFC, NFC split it this year as far as the AFC versus NFC South, North, East, West. So good job, divisions. And thank you very much for joining me through this once again. Going to be ending this chapter of the NFL season, turning over to fantasy. Bye-bye.